So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Workforce Wednesday webinar. My name is Kirsten Bayer, and I'm with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are excited to bring this presentation to you regarding clean energy. And we are joined by Linda Larson and Peter Fugel. Did I pronounce that right, Peter? Hopefully I didn't butcher it. And we are excited to hear from them today, but a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. We are on the Zoom webinar platform as opposed to Zoom meeting. And so if you're an attendee and you're not familiar with it, you will notice that it looks very similar to Zoom meeting, has all the same toolbar capabilities and everything. However, you as an attendee do not have your microphone, and that is purposeful and intentional. We will have a Q&A and opportunity for you to ask open questions and have discussions with the presenters, but we are holding that until the end. So at the end of the presentation, feel free to raise your Zoom hand on your toolbar, and I'm happy to unmute you and you can speak freely. And then if you have a question or comment or concern throughout the presentation, feel free to type that in the chat or the Q&A, and we're happy to address those as well. This webinar is being recorded and it will be hosted on our Illinois Workforce Academy.com website where we host all of this series. We've been doing this since 2017 now. So if you want to go back and view any of the past technical assistance trainings or professional development sessions from a Workforce Wednesday webinar, we welcome you to do that. Those are all on our website and all recorded. We were doing this pre-pandemic even, so we were ahead of the game. And the recording today will be hosted on Illinois WorkNet as well. So I will put both of those URLs in the chat momentarily. You will also receive a follow-up email tomorrow from Zoom, and in that will be the recording. You'll also find the presentation slides from today on our website, and then you can find any resources that the presenters provide us as well there. And then you'll also have a link to a follow-up survey. I am a part of the staff that sits on the WIOA Professional Development Committee, which is a committee that is consisted of 4 title partners. And then we also have local representation and business representation on that committee. And they are a committee that helps to plan and provide this Workforce Wednesday webinar series to you all. And so we use that survey as feedback to not only let us know how this session went, but any future sessions that you would like to see or any topics that you feel like you would like to have a professional development session on. We welcome those that feedback from you because we really want to meet the system where you all are at, and we want to provide that training for you. So feel free to take that. It's only about 6 questions now, I think 5 or 6 questions. We've shortened it, so it should be quick and easy for you all. If anyone has any logistical questions, you can feel free to type those in the chat and let me know. I will be here as staff to help facilitate and support today. We do also have closed captioning on for accessibility reasons or note-taking purposes, so feel free to turn that on and use that. And then just before I hand it off to our presenters, I'm going to launch our polls. So we have our beginning polls that we do every Workforce Wednesday webinar. And the first one is just where's your local area at? Because we want to make sure that we're hitting all across the state of Illinois. We are a long state, as we all know, and we want to serve from the very top to the very bottom. And then we also would like to know which best partner do you represent? Do you best represent Title I, Title II, 3, or 4, or are you best representative of a CBO or state or local workforce innovation board or other WIO partner? So if you could take a couple seconds to answer that poll before we get started with the presentation. I'll give it just a little bit longer here. A couple more people filtering in. I see James typed in the chat and he's from Wright College. Welcome, James. Thank you for introducing yourself. Let me go ahead and make sure that everyone can type in the chat. Yeah, everyone can. Okay. All right, it's been about a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and, oh, some people are still joining us and they're still answering the poll. I'll leave it open, but Linda, if you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Sure.
couple more seconds here. Okay. Well, Linda, you're doing that. I'm just going to share the results so that you, the presenters, know, as well as everyone on the call. So we have a good span across the state. It looks like people are really spread out, Chicago, Northern, Southern. We have one person from Southern, and then quite a few people that are statewide, serving statewide, which is awesome. And then we have quite a few Title I and II partners, as well as other WIOA partners and stakeholders too. So we welcome all of you. Thank you for spending the afternoon with us. We appreciate your time. We know it is valuable, especially in the summer. And I'm going to hand it off to Linda Larson and Peter to get us started.
Thank you, Kirsten. I'm delighted to be here today. My name's Linda. I am with the University of Illinois Climate Jobs Institute, and I'm joined by my colleague, Peter Fugil. We're excited today to share some of our research regarding the evolving workforce needs related to clean energy. And looking at the participant list, I see many familiar names, and we're looking forward to having a discussion with you today and sharing some of the results of our ongoing research. Wanted to briefly go over what we're going to be covering today. First of all, I wanted to just briefly introduce the Climate Jobs Institute, who we are, and some of the resources that we produce that can hopefully help all of you in your workforce programming. And then the bulk of our webinar today will be on, we'll be sharing some clean energy employment insights from Illinois. We'll be looking at the numbers, the growth, the demand for clean energy jobs, some of the impacts of policy and the training needs, and then ending with some key takeaways for workforce programs in Illinois. This is a photograph that we recently took of our staff and our research assistants. We are a small and relatively new applied research center that receives state funding to support the clean energy workforce. And our mission is to conduct research to inform the state's clean energy transition through research that foregrounds workers and their communities. And as we have been getting started over the last few years, we've tried to develop a suite of resources that can support clean energy workforce development. You may be familiar with some of these resources, and I'll put links later in the chat to some of these resources. But we helped to create the CEJA mapping tool that is used in the CEJA workforce programs. It's been accessed thousands of times, probably by many of you, and we appreciate your feedback on the map. This map includes locations of training programs, of priority communities for the CEJA workforce programs. It includes layers including apprenticeship programs, clean energy manufacturers, community colleges, coal plant and mine closures. Really, this mapping tool is meant to help people visualize some of the clean energy assets and opportunities in the state of Illinois. And then our other most popular resource that we recently updated in February is regional clean energy jobs data packets. And we have gathered information about different regions throughout the state, some of the clean energy job opportunities that are in each region. You can see here a few of the slides from those data packets, but I'd encourage you to take a look. And again, if you have feedback on what should be included in these data packets, we'd love to hear from you. And later, I'll pop the link for those resources in the chat. And we've produced a series of reports and policy briefs that relate to clean energy, the CEJA workforce programs, the policies, federal and state policies related to clean energy. And on our website, you can take a look at some of those reports and policy briefs. We are working on one that we'll be sharing a little bit of today in the webinar. We're creating an Illinois Clean Jobs Inventory that we hope to update regularly to help guide the clean energy workforce development programs in the state of Illinois. And this resource is trying to answer a few key questions that the workforce that impact the workforce programs that some of you are involved in. First of all, how many clean energy jobs are there in Illinois? What industries, what regions, what technologies create the most jobs? We're looking at recent trends. So where is there increased demand and sustained growth? We're looking at job quality and pay, which occupations have relatively high and low pay on average, especially for new hires. And we're looking at qualifications as well. What qualifications do workers need for clean energy jobs? Which occupations have higher or lower barriers to entry? And then finally, how do federal and state policies impact these workforce trends? So stay tuned. We'll be publishing that later this summer, and we're looking forward to sharing that with all of you. You get a little bit of a preview here. We thought we'd, at a very high level, share some of our findings that are relevant to the state's workforce programs with you. And I'm going to turn it over to Peter to kick us off on that.
Thanks, Linda. I'm happy to join you all and share some of the results that Linda was describing. I'm going to start by giving an overview of what we mean when we're talking about clean energy jobs and some of the main sectors, which are defined by different types of clean energy technologies that we're focusing on. So there are many ways of defining clean energy or green jobs. There are also different ways of classifying or grouping those jobs. And it's important to acknowledge at the outset there's no single correct or official definition. We're mainly drawing on a broad definition which exists in CEJA legislation related to the CEJA curriculum, as well as definitions of different technology sectors that have been put out, for example, by the Department of Energy. But I want to give you hopefully a short, clear definition of some key terms that we're going to use throughout this presentation. So first, clean energy jobs. These include not only jobs in the generation of clean energy, like wind and solar power, but also transmission, distribution, storage of electric power, and manufacturing of equipment or components that might go into vehicles, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, or equipment that's used in on-site energy use in buildings and improving the efficiency of that energy use. Think about high efficiency air conditioners, appliances, heat pumps. And I do want to note that we're including nuclear power as a form of clean energy with no greenhouse gas emissions, as well as more efficient forms of vehicles or HVAC equipment, which might have lower emissions than conventional equipment. Now, we can group together jobs according to what kinds of technology, so what source of energy they use, as well as what their purpose or their function is in the way that energy is used. For example, motor vehicle transportation versus transmission and distribution of electric power. And we can also group jobs according to the primary business or product that the employer provides. That's known as the industry. And we can finally group them according to the specific job or worker's duties or trade. And that's what we call occupation. So it's important to keep in mind that sector is a really broad classification, and that's going to include workers in a variety of industries and occupations. And then we can gain additional insights about the types of businesses and the types of jobs that are involved in these sectors by pulling in data on specific industries and occupations. So that's broadly the outline for our presentation today. Now, one metaphor that we're also going to use, hopefully to make this a little more vivid, is to compare clean energy to a garden. So the clean energy workforce is like a garden. Maybe I have this on my mind because it finally feels like summer in Chicago, and we're seeing gardens begin to grow and flower. But any good gardener knows that you don't want to plant just one type of crop. Don't want to put all your eggs in one basket because the squirrels might devour your tomatoes, or it might be too wet or too hot, for a particular plant to thrive. And for this reason, gardeners like to have a mix. And we can think about the clean energy workforce in similar terms. So there are some sectors, some types of clean energy that are like hardy perennials. So energy efficiency, transmission, distribution, these are well-established sectors that create opportunities year after year under varied policy and economic conditions. We expect those to continue to grow. Then there are some sectors that can grow very quickly and generate a lot of jobs in a relatively short period of time. These are like annual crops. So wind and solar, we've seen tremendous growth in Illinois in recent years. However, potentially less stable or less durable jobs over the longer term. Finally, we have some tender seedlings or hybrid strains that have the potential to really take off under the right conditions, but currently generate a relatively small number of jobs in Illinois. We can think about sectors like battery storage, geothermal, heating and cooling, and hydrogen. This graph gives you an overview of the four main sectors that we're focusing on. The number of jobs in Illinois as of 2024. That's the most recent data we have from the Department of Energy's U.S. Energy Employment Report, or USER. And you can see that the largest sector here is energy efficiency. Again, this is concerned with use of energy on-site, so in buildings, for heating, cooking, and other kinds of appliances. So 50,000 of almost 2/5 of our total clean energy jobs in Illinois support energy efficiency. The next largest sector is transmission, distribution, and storage, with about 36,000 jobs. And these are primarily jobs in traditional electric poles and wires, the grid infrastructure that all sorts of technologies depend on. By contrast, electric power generation, which is what we often think of in terms of clean energy, so wind, solar, nuclear, other forms of power generation, is a smaller share, about 1/5, with 24,000 jobs in Illinois. And the smallest of these sectors, clean vehicles, which includes electric vehicles as well as hybrid and hydrogen vehicles, is relatively small, with 15,000 jobs. So overall, we can estimate we have 127,000 clean energy jobs in Illinois across these four sectors, which is a significant number, and it's comparable to estimates that other researchers come up with using somewhat different definitions. So now we're going to go into a little more detail about each of these sectors, starting with the energy efficiency sector. And drawing on that garden metaphor, what we see is hardy perennials that are well established with some promising shoots of growth in clean energy. Here's a breakdown of employment by the specific technology that's primarily supported by these jobs. So the data that we're drawing on, they ask employers how many of their employees support energy efficiency, other kinds of energy-related functions, and then further, which specific technologies they spend most of their time working on. So here it's trying to distinguish for employees who might work with a variety of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment, gas furnaces, as well as air source heat pumps, which are electric technology. It's trying to distinguish employees who primarily work with one or the other. So the high efficiency renewable HVAC is going to include those electric or higher efficiency equipment, as well as Energy Star, these kind of certified high efficiency appliances. Advanced building materials could include things like more energy efficient windows or panels. And together, those constitute the nearly 51,000 jobs in energy efficiency. And of those, more than half are in that high efficiency or renewable HVAC subsector. Compare that with traditional heating, ventilation, air conditioning, which is a little larger, 29,000. But there's we see that these cleaner, higher efficiency segments already represent a large share of the energy efficiency sector in Illinois. And as I already suggested, we predict that energy efficiency jobs are going to continue to grow, albeit at a modest pace. Looking over the past 5 years, we've seen steady growth, a few percent per year. And this has been supported by state and federal investment in weatherization, other energy efficiency programs, as well as utility-based programs, which are trying to deal with this new reality of growing demand, load growth for electricity, which constrain the grid. Also, investments in manufacturing, which tend to be more intensive users of electricity. And in many cases, energy efficiency, reducing the demand for energy, is the most cost-effective way to deal with those demands on the grid. So the more energy you save, the less you have to generate through new power sources. In terms of seedlings, we've been focused particularly on heat pumps. We have another more detailed project that's looking at building electrification in Illinois, what that will take in terms of investments and workforce. And we see that HVAC contractors who have some heat pump expertise alongside conventional, natural gas equipment, or as a specialty primarily serving heat pumps, they're poised to take advantage of new policies, particularly in the state. The recently enacted Clean and Reliable Grid Affordability Act and funding through Climate Pollution Reduction Grant are going to create more programs and incentives for electrification using heat pumps, similar equipment, and we expect that's going to spur job growth. In terms of training needs, many of these energy efficiency jobs use skills that are similar to traditional HVAC work. And so having a strong foundation in mechanical skills, duct work, understanding how to service and troubleshoot equipment and appliances, those are going to translate well into these higher efficiency or electric equipment. However, there's also opportunities to develop more specialized training, which could be important, particularly for geothermal, which focus on in the next few slides. So for those of you who are not familiar, geothermal is a technology which can be used in some cases to generate electricity, but here we're primarily looking about geothermal used in heating and cooling. So sometimes called low temperature or shallow geothermal. Basically installing pipes below the Earth's surface or perhaps in a nearby body of water at relatively shallow depths, tens to a few hundred feet. And that takes advantage of the relatively constant temperature below the surface in order to regulate temperatures inside the home. So to provide cooling when the air temperatures are high or provide heating when the air is cold. And currently, it's a relatively small share of the overall HVAC market. It's hard to find a reliable estimate, but at most maybe 1% overall in Illinois. And it's down significantly nationwide since its last peak in 2010. Incidentally, that was the last time that we had federal incentives, subsidies for geothermal or ground source heat pumps. And this is a technology that tends to be expensive to install, though it does yield savings over time in terms of energy and often utility costs. So that business is sensitive to the kinds of policies or subsidies that are available. Now, with continuing federal tax credits through Inflation Reduction Act, as well as state credits that are poised to be implemented over the next few years, existing rebates from utilities, and some leasing models that are being offered in Illinois. We think these can create favorable conditions for the seedling of geothermal to grow into a more substantial share of the sector. And this sector in particular is going to require some more specialized skills, which do have overlap with existing gas utilities, water wells, other kinds of sort of pipe installation and maintenance jobs. But we don't see a lot of specialized training programs at present for geothermal. The next slide. This lists a few that we've been able to identify. Talking with contractors, we hear that there tends to be a shortage of geothermal drillers. The equipment, like this drilling rig shown in the photograph, are capital intensive. These are expensive pieces of machinery, and they require special licenses to be able to operate, and that helps explains why it's a relatively small share. The operating engineers is the only, Local 150 is the only union affiliated apprenticeship program that has a specific track for geothermal and water well drilling. There are also industry associations such as the Geothermal Alliance of Illinois, which have developed specialized certificates and training programs, which they offer alongside their conferences and to member contractors. And then there are some manufacturers such as Enertech that's based in Illinois, Conorco, a distributor, that have developed their own trainings. In some cases are partnering with community colleges in order to provide equipment and curriculum. So, these are things that we want to delve into more in that other project that I mentioned, but we'd be happy to answer questions, provide suggestions if people have a particular interest in that. I'll pass it off to Linda to talk about some of the other sectors that we've been focusing on.
So Peter mentioned that the energy efficiency sector is the largest sector. Electric power generation is the third largest clean energy sector in Illinois. And in this case, we have some annuals, solar and wind, that are outgrowing perennials. And by perennials, we're thinking of like coal and natural gas and nuclear in terms of jobs. So if you look at this electric power generation breakdown, Peter has put the kind of clean or greener power generation in green. And fossil fuel generation in gray. You can see that the clean energy generation, if you add those up, it's 24,000 jobs, and fossil fuel generation is closer to 9,000 jobs. So the clean energy generation jobs are outpacing fossil fuel generation jobs in Illinois, with the largest job sectors in wind and solar. Nuclear energy, half of our electric power in Illinois is generated by nuclear energy, but it only employs about 4,000 individuals. It will remain a major stable employer in Illinois. So we wanted to take a look at employment trends over the past 5 or so years in Illinois for electric power generation. And sector level data shows relative stability with some gradual solar growth. So the one line here that you can see some significant growth is solar. And the other sectors, wind, nuclear, and hydro, are more steady employment over the years. Employment in solar and wind, if you look at job postings, you see even more growth in the solar industry. So solar shows the fastest employment growth and also the job posting growth. So we analyzed job postings from Lightcast job posting aggregate data. We found about 52 postings per 100 solar workers in Illinois, which may indicate high churn and high demand in the solar industry over the past 3 years. The wind sector shows slower employment growth and negative job posting data. So we expect that the wind industry saw more growth during the last decade. The past 4 or 5 years, it's seen a lot slower growth in Illinois. So we're interrupting our garden metaphor with a garden pest here. So as many of you are aware, the federal tax credits that were established through the Inflation Reduction Act, many of those have been rolled back, and this is impacting the development of renewable energy in the state of Illinois. So in particular, we have 3 clean energy tax credits that were spurring significant growth in Illinois, and all 3 have been rolled back or will soon be phased out. So the residential clean energy credits were phased out last December, and the clean electricity production and investment credits will be phased out in the coming years. Contractors and developers are working hard to take advantage of remaining credits and exhibiting enormous creativity and flexibility to do so. And we did publish a report where we surveyed and interviewed a couple hundred individuals to see the impact of these tax credit rollbacks on Illinois clean energy workers. And if you're interested, we can share that link in the chat as well. So estimates from these tax credit rollbacks, other organizations have estimated the economic impact of those rollbacks. They expect to see in Illinois less investment in clean energy and less generation and fewer jobs accordingly. And in our study, we explored how contractors, how workforce programs, how Various organizations are responding to these credits, credit rollbacks. We found that state incentives are, to some extent, mitigating the negative impact, and many businesses, especially right now, are continuing to hire to take advantage of the expiring tax credits. Some businesses, however, are beginning to lay off people or implementing hiring freezes. A few of the quotes we heard, a few of the um, contractors that we talked to said things like, "We're in a hiring freeze. We're not sure what funding will look like. We're being very cautious." Others talked about struggling to find workers because they wanted to get the work done before the tax credits expired. So one said there's only so many contractors and so much qualified labor, and everybody is under the same timelines. People were working together to try to take advantage of tax credits that were remaining, and there was general concern about the availability of jobs in the future. But I will say numbers so far do not show a decline in jobs over this past year, but stay tuned in the future. We expect jobs to continue to grow, but at a somewhat depressed rate. So our prediction, based on the data and what we've heard, solar jobs will continue to grow in Illinois. We have strong policy to support it, but at a more modest pace than expected. So solar is the fastest growing sector in Illinois with steady growth over the past 5 years. Growth is flat for some of these other electric power generation sectors over the past few years. Policies are impacting the rate of growth in these industries, but continued state investment in solar will ensure that solar jobs can continue to grow in Illinois, albeit at a more modest pace due to the federal rollbacks. State incentives for wind will likely ensure that jobs can remain steady, but they are unlikely to grow as much. And then finally, Illinois recently lifted its moratorium on nuclear, which could mean that there may be build out of more nuclear power facilities in the future, which could lead to some jobs. And then finally, it's worth mentioning again, we're in a period of intense load growth, electric load growth from data centers. We need more electric generation, and renewable energy is a great way to get that generation, so we can expect to see more renewable energy and more clean energy jobs because of that need for more electric generation. Next industry or next sector I wanted to highlight is transmission, distribution, and storage jobs. We consider these hardy perennials, so been around for a while, steady, lots of jobs, plus some seedlings in this sector. So data shows that there are about 36,000 jobs in this sector that are related to clean or cleaner transmission, distribution, and storage. These include traditional transmission and distribution jobs associated with electric power transmission and distribution. They include battery storage technologies, smart grid and microgrid, and other grid modernization jobs, and represents a good, stable source of jobs in the clean energy industry. Our prediction is that transmission and distribution jobs will grow modestly, will continue to grow. Storage jobs may grow rapidly because of policy impacts. So what we have seen over the past 5 years is that transmission and distribution jobs have remained steady, while storage jobs have grown rapidly. The recently passed Clean and Reliable Grid Affordability Act, or CERJA, established battery storage procurement programs and a virtual power plant program. We can expect to see more jobs that support battery storage over the next few years, although this is a relatively small sector. So if you go back to this, the storage jobs in Illinois, nearly 3,000. So it will grow, but it may not be a huge number of jobs compared to some of these other sectors. And also in this sector is EV, electric vehicle infrastructure jobs, and state and federal funding for EV infrastructure, for the most part, is continuing. And so we can expect to see electric vehicle infrastructure jobs continue to grow. And again, because we are seeing a lot of growth in distributed generation from solar and wind and electric load growth from data centers, this will strain the electric grid and require more transmission lines. It will require operations and maintenance and grid modernization. So for this reason, we expect to see growth in the sector over the coming years. The last sector that we wanted to highlight here in our data is the clean vehicles sector. This is a sector that's growing moderately and has a mix of annuals and seedlings. So you can see here motor vehicle employment by sector. We've got hybrid and plug-in electric vehicles, battery electric, hydrogen fuel cell. Now compared to gasoline, diesel vehicles, this is a relatively small share of the motor vehicle market. So 15,000 jobs supporting clean vehicles compared to 92,000 internal combustion and other vehicles, jobs that support internal combustion and other vehicles. So smaller share compared to some of these other sectors and growing. So what we predict is that clean vehicle jobs will see growth, but at a more modest rate than previously expected. So Illinois clean vehicle jobs grew significantly from 22 to 23 and then leveled off in 2024. EV manufacturing job postings peaked in 2023. So we have a little more volatility in this sector than in some of the other sectors where we see more steady year by year growth or steady job numbers. And the policies do impact job numbers quite a bit. Federal incentives for electric vehicles have been rolled back, but rising gas prices from the war in Iran may drive people to purchase electric and hybrid vehicles. So it's a little difficult to predict how this will impact it, but we expect to see some growth. State electric vehicle and manufacturing incentives are expected to continue to spur clean energy growth, job growth in Illinois. And the renewable energy, the Reimagining Electric Vehicles program established tax incentives for EV and battery manufacturing, and we can expect to see some jobs as those facilities start to scale up. So in terms of training needs, existing auto mechanic programs will need to train people to service EVs and hybrid vehicles. And then there's opportunities for workforce programs to build partnerships with manufacturers of electric vehicles and batteries and components to identify training and workforce needs. I'll turn it back over to Peter.
Thanks, Linda. So what we have been talking about were these larger sectors, which are defined in terms of the kinds of technology, the kinds of energy source or function that they serve in our energy system. Now we're going to home in a bit on some select industries, so types of businesses, and then later occupations or types of jobs that are involved with one or more of those clean energy sectors. Across Illinois, we see that the jobs that we've broken down previously by sector are concentrated in a certain number of industries. So construction has the largest share of those clean energy jobs. It's about 38% of the total, followed by professional services, which can include a range of different administrative, business, or operations types jobs, often office-based, at about 24% of the total, followed by manufacturing with 21%. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about construction and manufacturing in particular, because these tend to be jobs that either have lower barriers to entry or require different qualifications than a four-year college degree or kind of specialized training. Now, if we look at specific sectors, such as electric power generation sectors, we see that the mix of industries that are involved with these sectors really varies a lot. And you can contrast, so these graphs show the percent of jobs nationwide. We don't have comparable data just for Illinois, but nationwide, what percent are in these broad industries? And for solar, nearly half of solar sector jobs are in the construction industry, which makes sense when you consider what Linda talked about, the rapid growth that we've seen in that sector. Many jobs are involved in the initial phases, the construction and installation of solar, fewer ongoing jobs in operations and maintenance. Contrast that with nuclear, where the vast majority of jobs, around 70%, are in utility industries. These are the businesses that are actually operating nuclear power plants and providing that ongoing electricity. There's relatively few jobs in construction, which, as we know, nuclear has, we haven't seen a lot of growth in new nuclear facilities, certainly not in Illinois. Now, this difference in the composition means that the types of jobs that are being created in these sectors really varies. And so if we're interested in construction jobs, those are going to be concentrated in these sectors that are growing. So turning to construction, we can see that overall it's about 30%, but in these faster growing sectors or emerging sectors such as solar, battery storage, a higher share of those jobs are in construction. Also, energy efficiency jobs are often classified as construction. They might also be contractors that provide service, maintenance, repairs, still classified along with construction. And the more established sectors are going to have a smaller number of construction jobs, more of those operations, either business services or utility industry jobs. And it may be an obvious point, but construction jobs are going to be located where that infrastructure is built or maintained. And so these are going to be more on-site. In the case of renewable energy, often more remote because the land needs for these particularly large utility scale energy developments are extensive, and they often want to locate near existing transmission infrastructure. And so that's why we see more of those projects being built central, western, southern Illinois, where there's larger amounts of land available near those transmission lines. We do want to highlight the importance of trade unions. I know that there's already some discussion in the chat. We look forward to fielding more questions, answering elaborating on this later, but we know that construction and building trades supply workers for all types of energy projects, including all of the clean energy sectors we're talking about today, as well as fossil fuel and non-energy construction projects. They play an important role in enhancing the quality of those jobs, negotiating better wages, benefits, working conditions, and importantly, also in providing workers with skills and continuity of employment across projects. And so construction trades workers who are involved with building out solar and wind projects can move very easily to performing maintenance on existing nuclear power plants or refineries, and then also building out schools, highways, other kinds of non-energy related projects. And as we know, they also play an important role in policymaking and enforcement in Illinois. Now, different occupations do have quite different rates of unionization in Illinois. And so that's important when we think about the pathways, since the typical pathway into a union construction trade is going to be through a union affiliated or joint apprenticeship program. And in the case of occupations like electricians, that's the majority of workers in Illinois who are members of the union and are typically entering that occupation through an apprenticeship. It's about double, more than double the rate of unionization nationwide. We also see greater union density in Illinois than the nation overall for occupations like construction laborers. However, most laborers in Illinois are not union members. And so there are other pathways that don't necessarily require an apprenticeship. Similarly with HVAC mechanics, higher rates of unionization in Illinois, but apprenticeships are not necessarily the most common pathway. When we focus on apprenticeships, the vast majority of these are union affiliated in Illinois. We've seen significant growth over recent years. And from interviews, other research that we've done, we know that clean energy has been an important contributor to that growth. Apprenticeships increasingly incorporate clean energy topics into their required curriculum and also offer, in some cases, more specialized training through pre-apprenticeship programs or through special certificates that can qualify workers for particular types of projects. In terms of recommendations, we think that the approach of the building trades to training can be instructive even in for the broader workforce in the sense that they're focusing on basic skills, foundational skills that can be applied to a variety of projects. So incorporating clean energy training on specific technologies like solar or battery storage, but also these foundational skills, hand tools, safety, other skills that can be applied to different types of energy or non-energy construction projects. And that's a way to help workers weather the boom and bust cycles that we see in some of these faster growing sectors and to maintain more stable employment. They also have important partnerships with their signatory employers, contractors, which allows them to require use of apprentices, ensure that there's a pipeline for newer members to work on projects, particularly in sectors like solar that might be more accessible for apprentices or less experienced tradesmen. Looking at manufacturing jobs, I already mentioned these are about a fifth of the total in Illinois. As you might expect, they're a greater share in motor vehicles, but also a significant share in energy efficiency, thinking about the kinds of equipment and components that go into HVAC or advanced materials. There's somewhat less of that manufacturing employment in solar and wind in Illinois. And we would refer you to the regional data packets, which were, I shared a link earlier in the chat, if you're interested in trying to identify, specific employers or factories, in general, there's large concentrations in central Illinois, but it really varies, depending on the area and the industry. And this is an example of the types of information you can find in those packets and in the CEJA map that Linda described previously. Our recommendations here is that, there's opportunities, there's also risk. We've seen growth during the previous federal administration has since leveled off or even declined. Some facilities that did receive funding or were slated to open have not ramped up or even gone bankrupt in some cases. But there are still manufacturers that are hiring and are planning to expand production. Goshen is an example of a battery manufacturer that's received funding through that REV program. And there's opportunities to partner. I know some companies like Rivian are already doing this with community colleges, other workforce organizations in order to help them recruit and train their workforce. In general, these don't tend to be as specialized jobs with clean energy. So many of the skills that are relevant for other kinds of manufacturing also apply to electric vehicles or clean energy equipment. Turning to occupation, here we're really interested in the types of jobs, the trade or duties that workers perform. And we know that there's a wide variety that are involved with clean energy sectors. These present distinct kinds of opportunities. So many of these occupations that are more common, more highly involved in clean energy, don't require a college degree, particularly thinking about construction, manufacturing occupations. However, there may be non-degree credentials, such as an occupational license, certification, or an apprenticeship for those more unionized occupations that are required. And as I've already discussed, there's an overlap between the types of skills that are needed for those clean energy and conventional construction, HVAC, or manufacturing jobs. One pattern that we see is there tends to be a trade-off between the pay or quality of the jobs and how accessible they are for workers trying to enter into those occupations. Higher paid, more stable jobs may have more barriers to entry in terms of the kinds of credentials or training that are required. Whereas jobs that are more accessible for workers without specialized training or experience may provide lower pay, less stability. And just to give you some examples, these are a few occupations that we're focusing on in our inventory on the next slide that have different kinds of qualifications for construction electricians. Most of those are going to be come out of union affiliated apprenticeships in Illinois and require local licensing in order to practice. Compare that with construction laborers where most workers receive on-the-job training, although there are apprenticeships available, which might be less selective than those electrician apprenticeships, and they don't require a license to practice their trade. HVAC mechanics and installers, another example where on-the-job training is common. There are also vocational programs and certificates that are required, particularly for work with asbestos and refrigerants. And then what about the pay or the quality of the jobs? Pay isn't the only indicator of job quality, but it is the one that we have the most extensive data on. And we see that jobs that have higher qualifications or licensing requirements tend to have higher pay, with the electricians making about $44 on average in Illinois in 2024. And even at the lower end of that distribution, so 25th percentile, a quarter of workers make that or less. It's about $32 for electricians. Compare that with laborers, where the average pay is about $34, and that lower, kind of closer to the starting wage, about $23. Still substantial room for growth, perhaps in the more unionized segments of that occupation. You can get up to $47 at the 75th percentile. By contrast, solar photovoltaic installers, the average wage is $25 for workers at the 25th percentile, even lower, below $19. So this gives you a sense of kind of range that we're talking about when we say that there's a trade-off or an inverse relationship between qualifications and quality. Moving to conclusions, we think that there are some takeaways that are relevant for workforce programs, thinking about what kinds of sectors or jobs are in demand and likely to remain in demand or to grow in Illinois. Certainly construction jobs, we expect continued job opportunities for those growing sectors, but also professional services and manufacturing. Location is going to be an important factor there, considering whether there are energy developments or manufacturing facilities in your area, or corporate headquarters, other kinds of offices that could demand professional services. We think that opportunities in those perennial sectors that are well established are going to be more reliable sources of jobs in the near term. And many of these might be growing modestly overall, but given their size, they're generating job openings year after year. Energy efficiency, which has a large component of construction, operations, maintenance jobs, as well as transmission and distribution, electric grid, utilities. Those annuals that are growing more quickly, particularly solar, present significant opportunities in areas where there is solar development or solar companies based. However, there's also risks that that growth might be slowed by changes in policy or economic conditions. Similarly, with these less established seedling sectors, there are fewer jobs currently, potential for substantial growth, but it's as yet uncertain given the policy and economic environment. Geothermal is one that we highlighted in particular. We think there's a lot of opportunity in Illinois, but as yet, relatively small number of jobs. As I'm sure you all are well aware, partnerships with employers and with unions can be a really essential way to support workforce development, particularly in sectors where we see newer technologies or greater volatility. We as researchers do our best to keep up with the changing landscape, but we know that the practitioners who are doing this work are really the experts who know the current conditions and how to anticipate and prepare for future development. And with that, I will thank you, and I would love to get into some of the questions. I see we've received a few already in the Q&A. I might defer to Linda to talk about enrollments and projected job openings. This is something we didn't focus a lot on in our presentation or in this inventory report. There's some employment projections from Illinois Department of Economic Security we've looked at, which mostly align with the recent trends that we showed in terms of faster growth for solar installers, for example, than other occupations. Linda, do you want to speak to the programs, openings, opportunities?
So the question you're referring to is,
yes, I should read this. Have you analyzed how the number of available training provider programs and their enrollment capacities compare to projected job openings over the next 2 to 3 years? Very specific question. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is not yet, but it's one that's on the front of my mind. When we talk about making sure that workforce training programs align with demand, we can show, about how many job openings there are total. Whether those employers are hiring from the workforce programs is a different question. Whether they're qualified, whether the people coming out of those programs are qualified for those openings is also a different question. And I think we need more information on that before we can say definitively. What I will say is that the placement numbers for the workforce programs are low, and that the job numbers in terms of growth, we're not seeing huge growth in any sectors. Even solar with 4% growth is not a huge growth percentage. So it's worth looking at the data. It's worth talking to people and making sure that that our workforce investments are not higher than the actual job numbers that are available. And feel free to unmute yourself if you want to follow up on that.
You're welcome to put questions in the chat, the Q&A, or
they can raise their hand and then I can.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
And I also saw some links you want the links to some of our resources, and let me pull that up right now and make sure that goes in the chat. Okay, what else are we seeing?
I see some comments. I'm not sure it's quite a question concerning solar program graduates in Chicago. Challenges if they're not going into the apprenticeship with the electricians, Local 134, challenge, placement and any work in the industry. I would say that, in Illinois, there are policies that support union involvement, particularly in larger solar projects, so utility scale type projects. Those require a project labor agreement, so essentially union contract, and the union is going to be the one to place people, to hire into those projects. By contrast, in residential solar or in smaller projects, those don't require a project labor agreement. However, they also tend to be more spread out and potentially less stable kinds of jobs. It can be a challenge to find employers, contractors who are hiring on a regular basis for those jobs. I'll just say we have another project that some of my colleagues are leading, focusing on job quality in the solar workforce in Illinois. And they're trying to provide a more comprehensive view of these different segments of the industry, you know, the big projects as well as the smaller residential projects, and what kinds of job quality, working conditions workers are experiencing, and to provide recommendations for policymakers and for workforce partners involved. So I'm not sure if that, you know, quite addresses the concerns that were raised in the chat, but that is another resource that we'll be making available in the future.
Yeah, I just would add unions and contractors that are signatory to unions, they do hire a little bit differently. They're kind of governed by these collective bargaining agreements where they agree to hire first the union members, the apprentices that are in that union, but often they're not able to meet the demand with the union, so they often will hire for these large solar projects. They might hire what they call like book four um, laborers who can come in and participate in a job site, get some experience, and that can often be an effective pathway into the union. You know, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to those contractors, reach out to the unions themselves. Um, as I showed in the data, there's been significant growth in apprentice numbers, so they are bringing on more people, but it's still often pretty selective. These are there's a lot of people who apply for those apprentice spots, and it can be challenging in some cases to get in. Okay. Let's see, other questions. What are the most effective ways for employers and prospective employees to meet and network? That's a great question. I'm not sure we're the experts on that, but I hear, you know, I think the CEJA workforce programs and all of you are working to develop opportunities such as job fairs, meet and greets, get people on job sites, um, build relationships with the employers. I know that can take a lot of time. We are working on developing resources that can help you identify the largest employers in your region that are operating in clean energy. So you're aware of the manufacturing facilities there. You're aware of the businesses that are doing a lot of solar in your area. The regional data packets share some of that information, and the mapping tool can help. So we see our role as kind of building awareness, but certainly there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of connecting potential employees to these clean energy employers. Other questions? Let's see, we've got. Do you have a chart or report showing economic employment needs by each of the Illinois 10 economic development regions? Yes, to some extent. I think the data packets are organized by the 10 economic development regions and do identify some of the major clean energy employment needs in each region. Those are evolving. We update them every year, and we'll continue to add insights as we are able to gather and analyze the data. If you were advising a CEJA program on which pathway to add to their program, would you choose HVAC, heat pump, or electrician? That's a great question. And, I think we are involved in providing guidance to the DCEO team that is revising the curriculum for the CEJA Hub. So it's something I've been thinking about. Honestly, I feel like HVAC and heat pumps is a good, solid choice. Again, it's one of those perennials, as Peter was talking about. Large number of openings, large number of jobs. HVAC contractors that do have heat pump expertise will be well positioned to take advantage of this new and growing sector. So I think that's a good choice. Electricians, as Peter showed, those are highly unionized. That's a highly unionized profession. So if you can train people, help people prepare for an apprenticeship program, that would be a great way to go. The Climate Works pre-apprenticeship program is great, but there are some non-union pathways. I know some community colleges and trade schools offer electrician training as well. So, that could be a good opportunity too.
Yeah, I'd just add a few things to that. I think that HVAC is a field where you might be able to train people on some basic skills to work with pipe, fusing pipe, for example, or installing duct work for ventilation, air distribution systems. Those are more routine tasks, that might not require lengthy training or apprenticeship to learn, but can get people working in the field and then allow them to receive that on-the-job training, which can lead to more specialized roles, higher pay and career progression. So I would characterize that as maybe a lower barrier to entry, more accessible route. Another opportunity that I would point to, we didn't show it in these slides, but it will be in our inventory report, are workers involved with electric power line installation and repairs. So these typically work for electric utilities. Those don't necessarily come through union apprenticeships, but the employers' utilities have their own training programs and uh, development pathways that can result in quite stable, high-paid jobs without necessarily going through that apprenticeship program, which in some areas can be quite selective. I know in Chicagoland in particular, I think most of their apprenticeship enrollees at this point have college degrees, or there's like a substantial number that have post-secondary degrees. Just represent reflects how competitive, how popular those programs have become.
Other questions? All right. Well, appreciate you joining us today. We will. This presentation has been recorded, and we look forward to sharing our report in a few weeks, and hope to connect with all of you again soon.
Thank you so much, Linda and Peter, and everyone have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.